Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If you want to be a little malicious and one-up everyone else, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by Braywan Kenobi. Don't want the saleswoman? Let me find another for you. While I was putting myself through university, this was in the mid-2000s, I was working at a bicycle shop. I can honestly say it's the best place I've ever worked. The owners treated their staff very well, and so the shop retained loyal, highly capable employees that made loads of high-end sales. But what was somewhat unusual for a male-dominated industry in the mid-2000s was that there was an equal number of male and female employees. And these women were definitely the most qualified people for the job. One was an engineer for a bike company, one was a highly successful triathlete and XC racer, and even one of the owners was a woman. Almost having an unrelated university degree meant that I was by far the least impressive woman working at this place. I just liked bikes. One day, a man, maybe 50 to 60-ish, came into the shop. I was first on the scene. He said he was looking to buy a bike, and so I started going through the usual probing questions to determine what kind of bike he was looking for. Simple questions like, did he ride on the road or trails? Even the most incapable salesperson could use the answers to these questions to point the guy in the right direction. But he seemed highly resistant to talking to me or answering my questions. He finally said, "Is there someone else I could talk to?" Maybe he just didn't like my sales approach, or maybe I seemed too young to be knowledgeable. But since he didn't even give me a chance to prove myself and seemed to be staring longingly at my busy male colleagues, I had a hunch that he didn't think a woman was capable of selling him a bike. So I smiled and said, "Of course." Lucky for me, there weren't any other male idle employees in sight. So I grabbed one of the other women I worked with, quietly letting her know my suspicions about this guy. Before I was even out of earshot, I hear this man agitatedly say, "I need someone else." Suspicions confirmed. So we purposely seek out yet another extremely capable female employee to help this man. When he sees her approach, he shouts, "Just let me speak to your manager." So in struts the owner, who is very eager to join our malicious compliance stunt, with a beaming smile on her face. "I'm the owner. What can I do to help you today, sir?" The utter defeat on his face is something I will never forget. If you went to a place and that establishment was designed to sell you one type of item, would there be anything about an employee that works there that would make you reconsider buying from specifically that employee? Or would you assume that since they're working there, they probably know what they're doing? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Our next story is by Bada. You want me to check if your new BS policies are legal? Sure. About 10 years ago, I had my first real job working in a fast food chain for minimum wage. It was a bad job, but it was only to fill a gap between me dropping out of sixth form in February and starting my college course in September. After being there several months, the regional manager came over to visit and said about there being a few incidents regarding money missing from the tills that were never resolved. We're not exactly talking about the heist of a century here. It would be a few pence or at most 5 British pounds out, and this had only happened on a handful of occasions. Most were resolved to being mistaken orders on the tills or card receipts dropping behind the tills. Because of this, there was a new policy that they implemented where the staff members would each be personally responsible for their tills, meaning they required everybody to come in 15 minutes before their shift and stay 15 minutes after their shift to count the money in the tills. All of this time was unpaid. We were also told that if the tills were short, we had to pay it back out of our own pockets on the same day, no exceptions. Of course, if the tills were up, they'd just call that a win for them and pocket the extra cash. The staff always lose. Naturally, everybody was pissed about this except for one brown-noser who said it was great that people have to take responsibility for their mistakes. I guess unpaid overtime will teach us a lesson, right? I'm usually very quiet and introverted, but I'll absolutely speak out from something I truly believe in or protest against something I don't. I was the first to speak out against these new policies and question their legalities, to which the area manager responded with something along the lines of, "Feel free to check their legality. I assure you that we aren't breaking any laws." So I did exactly that. Later that night, I went home and checked our laws, and unsurprisingly, everything they were enforcing was illegal here. The area manager is based in Ireland, which more than likely has different employment laws, but his ignorance to our different laws and situation was painfully obvious. I called up the equivalent of a union, they don't exist here, and they confirmed that it was illegal and advised me to not adhere to the policies. Next shift comes around and I roll in at 11 a.m., my start time, and immediately the other staff start kicking off. I went upstairs, counted my float in the 15 minutes they expected it to take, and then actually started working at 11:15. I explained myself to the rest of the staff and showed them the evidence, and they all decided to follow suit. Everybody except for Brown Nose. She insisted that we all needed to do our part for the company, that pays us minimum wage, don't forget, and that we should be grateful for the jobs, still minimum wage. None of us took that on board and left her to carry on working for free if that's her choice. I think she was expecting something from the boss for her dedication. The local manager was also on our side, but he did have to tell the regional manager what was happening. On the regional manager's next visit about a month later, he started having meetings with the staff to investigate what this was all about and why we weren't sticking to the policy, and they all pointed towards me telling them not to. When he got around to meeting with me, he was pissed and started kicking off at me and asking why I was so determined to overrule him, to which I replied, "You told me to check the legalities of the policies, so I did," and showed him the evidence in the form of our local employment laws on my phone. Defeated, he left and decided to withdraw all the policies, including the ones where we had to waste time counting the floats and pay back any shortages. The rest of the staff there liked me for it, except for Brown Nose, but nobody liked her anyway. I don't know how many places you could get away with such a thing, but expecting people to do 15 minutes of free work every shift is probably not something you can put in a policy. But hey, that's why you do have to research the laws and know what's right and what's wrong. At least OP put in the work and they could call them out on it. And it's pretty alarming that when OP did tell them to their face that they can't do that, they just immediately wiped everything from the table. So they must have known, right? Our next story is by Diamond Faces, Kill 'em with Kindness. Back in 2019, I started working remotely for an international architecture firm as the project and sales manager. We create architectural renders for a variety of projects. Our clients come from all over the world and I managed a North American branch of the company. Our team's small and made up of myself and other women, also with backgrounds in architecture. We're lucky to work with a team that's very inclusive and supportive, and our clients are great 99% of the time. A few months into my new position, we get a phone call from an American developer requesting a rendering package. A team member from our Euro branch answers first and within 10 seconds transfers the call to our US team as per company policy. I answer the phone. "Hi, you've reached our company, how can we help you?" The caller immediately sounds annoyed but mumbles, "I want a drawing done of a building I'm making." I respond in my cheerful customer service voice, "Sure thing, we can help you with that." And I begin listing the design files we'll need from him to create a 3D render. He cuts me off a few seconds in and says, "You don't know what you're talking about." It's not uncommon to deal with annoyed clients. Most people are stressed out with tight deadlines of their own, so I try to be as patient and helpful as possible. I ask the caller, "Will you please describe your project in detail? That way we can create the best design package for your..." He cuts me off again. "I want to speak to the manager. You have no idea what you're doing. I want to talk to the man who answered the phone." At this point, I figure out what's going on. I politely explain to him that I'm the manager for American projects, and the man he briefly spoke with works with our Euro branch, but the caller's just not having it. He yells into the phone, "I want to speak to an American." Thank God for volume control on headsets. Taking a huge breath, I plaster a smile across my face and explain again in a syrupy sweet tone, "I completely understand, sir. I'm the manager for our American branch. I can help you with your project." My motto is kill him with kindness. He explodes. "The man I talked to understood my entire project. You know nothing." So begins the death spiral. I decide to agree to everything he says. He says, "I want to speak to someone else." I say, "Sure thing. I'll transfer you to our Euro department." He says, "No, I want to speak to an American." I say, "You got it. How can I help you?" He says, "Fine. I want to speak to your boss." I say, "Sure thing. He's in the Euro department. I'll transfer you now." I transfer the call to my boss's office and wait for the inevitable. After a few seconds, my phone rings again with a transfer request. I answer with a grin. "Hi, you've reached our company. How can we help you?" Dead silence on the line. Then our dear caller huffs. "Fine, I'll call you back tomorrow then." I cheerfully bid him farewell. "Okay, sounds great. I'll speak to you then." Click. We never did hear back from him again. It's a shame. I really do like helping our clients. I'm almost more than sure that they said they'll call back tomorrow, hoping that a different person would be there to answer the phone. But if it's as consistent as OP's making it out to be, OP's going to still be there anytime. But they didn't hear back from them either way, so probably just gave up on that avenue. Our next story is by Yellow Spaces. You want the salted licorice? Sure thing. I used to work in a candy store back in high school. Pretty awesome job, not gonna lie. We had a pretty huge selection of candies to choose from, including a pay-per-pound candy case that took up most of the store. We sold a decent amount of licorice in different flavors, including salted licorice. If you're unfamiliar, it's just black licorice that's been dusted with powdered salt, or ammonium chloride, an extremely salty and bitter chemical. We had a few different versions of it, but one stood out for how darn salty it was. Seawater is less salty than that licorice. Pure salt is somehow less salty than that licorice. We would always have new employees eat a piece of it as initiation and share a few laughs at their facial expressions after the first bite. One day, an older man comes in and rudely asks where our salted licorice is. I guide him over to the licorice section and show him the choices we have. He immediately goes for the saltier than salt licorice coins. I try my best to dissuade him, explaining that this licorice is extremely salty, but he quickly turns on me. Young OP, I've been eating salted licorice my entire life. Just shut the heck up and weigh me out a pound so I can get the heck out of your darn store. Cue the malicious compliance. I gladly weigh him up a pound of the salt coins and take him over to the register. I ring up his devil candy, hand him a receipt, and take a step back. Old man starts walking to the door, but luckily takes a piece and pops it in his mouth before leaving. Oh my freaking god, what in the heck is this? He screams after a few chews. The store's now dead silent. He storms back up to the register and starts screaming at me. This is the absolute worst licorice I've had in my life. How dare you let me buy this? Get your freaking manager right now. You deserve to be fired for selling me this. Before I can even say a word, my manager quickly comes up to me and motions me aside, saying, "Sir, I was listening to your transaction and OP made multiple attempts to talk you out of your selection. Normally I'd be more than happy to issue you a refund, but considering your language and treatment of my employees, I'm going to need you to get the heck out and never come back." The old man was so taken aback that he stormed out with his tail between his legs, and we never saw him again. Turns out the only thing saltier than the licorice was his attitude. I'm just sat here wondering why they even carry it in the store. If at any point when somebody shows any interest in possibly buying it, the first reaction of the salesperson is to go, "Are you really sure you want that? That's super salty. Why even carry it? If it's something in your store that requires a precursor of, you probably won't like it, why waste your time with it? Is there that many people that do like it?" And our final story of the day is by the MK-84. List all family members with deceased medical condition? Okay. So I'm an incoming graduate student at a big school, and a requirement to be in person is to complete an immunization and medical history form. Sounds standard and fair considering the environment we're in. Well, on one of the sections, it wanted me to list medical conditions of my family members. The exact wording was something like, list of medical conditions of your family, mother, father, grandparents, etc. This makes sense, but as I go down, one of the conditions is deceased. Cue the malicious compliance. Well, I figured I should list all my family members that have this medical condition. That would be my great-grandfathers and my great-grandmothers, but I should list all 4 of them. Now that I think about it, my great-great-grandfathers and my great-great-grandmothers have that medical condition. All 8 of them. Pretty serious stuff. So I went on listing all of my family that have this medical condition until I got tired. I haven't heard anything about my malicious compliance, but I did get clearance to be on campus, so they probably appreciated my thoroughness. I do wonder if there's any kind of database or local records they could search for names like that, where they might be able to see maybe passed away from COVID? I don't know. They probably can't do that, but I guess what I'm struggling with is why would there be the necessity of listing deceased family members? Not even asking for a cause, just asking, hey, do you have any immediate family members that are dead? It's kind of invasive in a way. Well, I sure hope at some point they can find a cure for that medical condition. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.